Well, that was interesting. It worked about 5 minutes ago because I double checked it. And all of a sudden, bang, it's not there. Anyway, that's fine. We'll just move along because we'll get a longer clip of Pierre Poilievre here in a minute. Tonight, the showdown for Prime Minister with Poilievre pivoting and five seeking the Liberal leadership. Plus, Canadian patriotism reaching new heights. From Montreal, this is Night Talk, episode 21. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And then from Playa del Carmen, Mexico, still not back home in Canada, I'm Eddie Tkalik.
And so we titled this segment Pierre's Pivot. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and his caucus gathered in Ottawa last week for meetings as the Liberals closed the gap in recent popularity polls. Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney is considered the front runner and has suggested removing the hated carbon tax as a direct consumer tax and moving to an industry-based tax. Now that has forced Poilievre to pivot from months-long Axe the Tax message. You remember that. The Conservatives held a patriotic rally in Ottawa on the 60th anniversary of our maple leaf flag on Saturday. Poilievre's speech included a message for U.S. President Donald Trump.
We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect the sovereignty and independence of our country.
Now that speech had all the trappings of a campaign kickoff as Poilievre made a number of policy statements, including
Axing the carbon tax is only the beginning. We will go ahead with the biggest and most patriotic tax cut in Canada's history, the Bring It Home tax cut. It will lower taxes on energy, work, home building, investment, and making stuff in Canada. We will axe the sales tax on new homes, saving you $50,000 and sparking 30,000 extra homes built every single year, which will mean more jobs for our carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and trades workers to pay for it. We will cut bureaucracy, consultants, and corporate welfare. We will impose a law. The waste of our money will end when I'm Prime Minister, and we will impose the same law on government spending that you impose on your household spending. We will be required to find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending that comes in.
So that was it was a really upbeat speech, and you know I've been critical of Poilievre in the past because he has not been acting like a prime minister in waiting. This speech, I would have to say, he really did start to show that side. We did hear still carbon tax Carney. I wish, you know, he's made his point on that one, Eddie, and it's in everyone's mind now. We don't need to hear it every speech. Yeah. We don't need to be reminded of it. And since it looks like Carney is going to be the front runner, or is the front runner and is going to win the race, I should say, you're going to have to start going after some of the things that he's saying now as he's out campaigning for the leadership, including the fact that a number of pundits who are following it, you know, his travels day by day, are saying that some of his messaging is becoming mixed in the fact he's saying one thing in one part of the country and something slightly different in another part of the country. And so far, because of the way he's been traveling around and not holding a lot of policy announcements or media availabilities, he hasn't been under the same level of scrutiny as somebody suggested the other night he will be on the campaign trail if he becomes leader of the Liberal Party and we find ourselves in a federal election. Don't forget there's going to be a gaggle of media types traveling with each of the leaders across the country, so they're on them. Yeah, they're basically with them every day, and so they can be picking up on these kinds of things. But overall, it was quite the rally. He did have, as you know, we heard some. It wasn't really tough, but he let Trump know that, you know what, we're going to stick up for our sovereignty and to basically buzz off. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to follow up on some of the. You're right. He is effectively campaigning. You know, let's call a spade a spade. I think everybody should be in campaign mode while waiting for the Liberals to select their leader of their party. So everybody should be on a campaign trail of mine, including Mr. Carney being the individual to beat. I listened to Poilievre, and you're absolutely right. I think except for I think 3 weeks ago or something like that, he may have gotten back into just trash talking Carney or trash talking Trudeau, which is very unbecoming at this particular stage. And he shouldn't have followed up on his rhetoric in the chamber floor, in the House floor, before it actually broke for the holidays. Except for that one faux pas 3 weeks ago, most of the time when he's on stage or he's speaking to the public or he's anywhere with his delegates, he certainly sounds extremely statesmanlike, as you like to put it, prime ministerial, potentially. And you know what? He's actually got me to the point of listening. I mean, really listening what the man has to say. Just as I will be really listening to what all the other candidates have to say, especially Freeland and Carney. So you know what? Good for him that he's actually listened to, I'm sure, his campaign managers and his public relations people in terms of what he actually needs to do to gain the ears of Canadian citizens right across the country. The other thing that I want to touch upon, which you mentioned very briefly, was some of his followers, media likes, had mentioned that when he's trying to make a point, it's slightly different depending on whether he's speaking to somebody out west or speaking to somebody out east. Quite honestly, I think that's a tactical advantage for him because, look, as much as we are the same in Canada right across the board, there is much diversity between our provinces and relationships, interprovincial relationships, and how we actually see the Prime Minister. So for him to understand the audience, I think, is extremely important, as long as the differences are not that vast. So I think that's smart politics, and as far as I'm concerned.
There's something overall based on his performance in the House of Commons, and certainly he has been, even as just an MP and a cabinet minister in the Harper government, he certainly was an attack dog, and he still is an attack dog, although some of what has happened in the House of Commons, and we've had shows on it last fall about the lack of respect in the Commons, I think really he needs to dial that back, and I can't shake that side of him, that impression I have of him at the moment. It's going to take more than this one speech that I watched from the rally on Saturday to convince me that he is able to make that transformation to a more statesman-like approach as the potential leader of our country. But there's just, and he has a couple of MPs around him who have been kind of following on his beat, and at times it has not been pretty for them either. And I just sit here and I just shudder sometimes and shake my head. So I'm going to be one of those, I think, unless there's a major turnaround here. He really does keep building on this level of statesmanship. I'm still going to have a question mark as I prepare to mark my X on the ballot. The same with, and we'll get into it in a few minutes, with Carney. There are he may be the front runner, but I have question marks about where he's coming from in I guess, for lack of a better term. So Pierre is actually, he has stepped out. That definitely was, whether it was a soft launch, I guess you could call it a soft launch to the campaign, because it really did have the feel and the look of a campaign launch. And we could very well, within this time next month even, or very near this time next month, be in the midst all of a sudden of a federal election campaign, depending on what happens after the Liberal leader is declared and becomes prime minister for a day. It's almost like winning one of those be a police chief for a day contests.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what, Gary? Dare I paraphrase you, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Are you asking yourself, would the real Pierre Poilievre please stand up? Because that's what I'm asking myself.
Bang on.
Who is this individual that we've been looking at, let's say, for the last 6 months, in terms of his activity within on the House floor, which many times has been very belligerent and disrespectful, even though he might have been raising some good points, very disrespectful and belligerent. Is that the Pierre Poilievre that we will see after he potentially might get elected? I certainly hope not. Or is Mr. Poilievre the statesman that both you and I have seen during the course of the week and the last couple of weeks, every time he got up to a microphone or a podium? Or is that the real Pierre Poilievre? Or is it a combination of the two? I think what he needs to do is to get rid of that persona of the Pierre Poilievre in the past that really was distasteful to a lot of Canadians, both conservative-minded or liberal-minded, regardless of what their mindsets were. He just didn't. I don't know who he is. I really don't know who he is, and it's going to take some work for him to convince me one way or the other that what I'm watching is the honest Pierre Poilievre, and that same Pierre Poilievre is the one who will be prime minister for the next 4 years. But suffice it to say, when you're looking at Carney, who has been minimizing his exposure to and his availability to the media, who is the real Carney? Sometimes we've seen glints and glimmers of humanity in him, more of a person that you might be able to relate to. But right now, all I'm seeing is this behind-the-desk paper pusher with very little personality, which doesn't do good for any political figure running for election. So in terms of both individuals running for election this year, I really don't know who I am honestly looking at anymore. And I quite honestly, I think that we're going to get to this later, but I think the debate is going to be extremely, extremely important for both English and French Canadians in terms of us being able to identify who the hell are we looking at? Where is the human being? Where are your policies? What do you plan to do? Speak to us Canadians as Canadians, right? And show us who you really are. And I think a lot of us are waiting for that. I certainly am. I think by your facial expressions, you're probably waiting to find out who these individuals actually are. Very, very important.
Well, it is, and you're right. The front runner in the Liberal leadership race, and at least the perceived front runner, and we'll get to him in a few minutes. But there are a lot of questions there. I don't dispute that for a second. And again, who is the real Mark Carney as well is the question I'm asking. Will we have the opportunity in an election campaign for somebody who has not been really in the thick of politics? He's been on the outside looking in and working around that, but not in the thick of politics. Poilievre has been, he's a career politician. And yes, he had a lot of work to do to bring the Conservative Party back after they went through, a couple of leaders. And yes, to a degree, he spoke to the average person, but there were times that it was almost like he was talking down to them, and then you start getting into the 2-word, 3-word slogans, all cutesy, but there's a shelf life on, best before date, whatever you want to call it, for these kinds of things. And frankly, he's long past the best before date with especially the carbon tax Carney. Like, stop. In the speech at one point he referred to Trudeau and carbon tax Carney because
Exactly.
he's shifting away from Trudeau, who only has a couple of weeks left. But you know, you had an audience, you had a rally, you had a soft launch for your election campaign. You put a couple of things out there like these tax, this huge tax cut he was talking about, and how he was going to, for every dollar spent, there has to be a dollar saved. But on the other side, what lurks behind that every dollar saved? What does that mean, down the road? Does that mean cuts to certain areas? Certainly, I would not disagree with downsizing government.
Correct.
It's, the Trudeau government was on a hiring spree before the pandemic hit and went into overdrive on the hiring spree during the pandemic. And a lot of those temporary workers, so-called temporary workers that were hired during the pandemic, are still there, damn well, drawing a government salary. And the level of service has, diminished. It just keeps diminishing instead of getting better. And the whole idea was we'll hire more people and increase the level of service and get things moving. That hasn't happened. Ask people who are still waiting for passports.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I don't have a problem with cutting the size of government. I don't have a problem with, reviewing all programs that are in place. But whatever happens with cuts, we have to remember that there's a certain segment of our society that does need that hand up, that support from the federal and or provincial levels of government. And the one thing that I haven't heard yet on healthcare is, what are we going to do? On either side, what are we going to do about healthcare? Because our healthcare, even though we still brag about it and it's universal, and yes, you can go to the hospital and get treatment,
help.
and you're not going to get slammed with a $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 bill as you try to get out the door. True. However, the money that's being spent and the return on investment we're getting don't add up. There is no return on investment in the healthcare system at the moment. Very well, minimal at best. And we need to deep dive into that. And then, as I've said in the past, we need to come up with a national standard level.
Correct.
And go on. But I'll get off my high horse on that one.
No, Gary, you're absolutely right. I mean, foremost on most Canadian minds, once it's decided who the candidates are for to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, healthcare is and must and has to be above all one of the hottest things that needs attention. We're not saying it's broken. It needs improvement. We're not saying it's a disaster. It needs some help. Like anything else we do in a business, like anything else we do in our home, nothing is perfect. By far, our health system is not perfect, many flaws, but it needs help. We need to tweak it. We need to make it more cost effective, which both you and I know is not the case right across the country, where we have committees assigned to subcommittees who are in charge of other committees. I mean, it's just complete administrative chaos. So, I think it will be a prominent discussion point amongst all the candidates for the seat of the Prime Minister, along with 4 or 5 others that I'm sure we're going to list off later on as the show progresses. They're all equally important, and each one is going to have to address every one of them specifically. The item at the end of the day, which may not necessarily be the least important, they have to be unified in terms of how we deal with the United States over the next 4 years. How do we deal with the United States over the next 6 months? Never mind 4 years. All of this is going to be important for them to discuss as part of their platform. So regular Canadians can identify with, well, what is your priority? And once you tell me what your priority is, without some of these BS fancy words and verbal diarrhea, how are you going to fix it? I mean, we don't want a 100-page document or a 1,000-page document in front of us. Tell me how you're going to fix it. And I'm sure that's exactly what you're looking for. I know my wife is looking for that. I know my sons are looking for that. And I know the common regular Canadian is looking for that. Why should I vote for you? And the reason I'm going to vote for you is because you're going to do A, B, C, and D. And this is how I plan to do it. Simple as that. And any one of those candidates who does not come out on top on every one of those issues, in my eyes, is going to be a tremendous lack of credibility to a lot of Canadians. Then Canadian has to decide, all right, I'd like to cast my vote. Do I vote for the individual that's going to be least damaging to me in the country? You know, you want to be able to vote to somebody that you know is going to do good for the country, as opposed to vote for the best of the worst, right? And we talked about that before.
Now, the other interesting thing that you can feel that we are on the cusp of an election campaign. The Conservatives have released, for lack of a better term, an attack ad on Carney, because, again, they perceive him as the guy they're going to be up against once the dust from the leadership campaign
That's already out there?
settles.
You've already got, no kidding.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see
I've
that.
watched, a couple of times it's popped up when I've been watching YouTube.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, the Liberals have launched an attack ad on Poilievre, and really lining him up right down to the term common sense. You know, we're the common sense Conservatives, and the Republicans and Donald Trump has been harping about it's common sense. We're bringing common sense back to government. Right. So they're lining him up with Trump and the Republicans. And then you've got the cons with their ad taking on Mark Carney. It'd be interesting if somebody else wins the Liberal leadership.
Yeah.
So we are like, the gloves are basically off now, and we are moving into campaign mode. It's starting to ramp up. And, you know, Poilievre has a bit of an advantage here because, you know, he jumped out already this past week. Plus, you know, he's had the exposure over the last number of years, really.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Whereas your new Liberal leader is going to have to all of a sudden jump on board. The time frame that leader will be in place is limited to the fact that if they don't call a snap election after winning the leadership, then they might be able to get a throne speech in and or a budget before they lose on a confidence motion. And then we're into an election campaign. So there's not going, the Liberal leader will not have a lot of time to really kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, that was, you know, the leadership campaign. Now I have to pull this all together for a national election campaign. You know, and that's going to be a big job.
Shades of Kamala Harris.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what we're witnessing, a Canadian version of the Democratic meltdown.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Liberals have closed the gap, and that's one of the reasons that Poilievre and the cons are pivoting now away from the carbon tax election, axe the tax, and
right.
They, you know, originally thought that they would have Trudeau to go up against, and so that part of it's been removed, and now all of the candidates for the Libs are saying, you know, they're spinning their own version of how they're going to approach the carbon tax.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it's going to be different than what we have now, no matter what. So the axe, the tax, the way they were going at it, has gone out the window too. So there's the Conservatives really have had to pivot, and of course they're looking at that gap starting to narrow. And depending on the pollster,
like six, depending on what pollster, anywhere between 6 and 7.5 point gain over the last 6 weeks. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, exactly. That's huge. After the Conservatives enjoying like double-digit leads for the last
Yeah.
year or so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they've got to be worried and looking over their shoulders for sure. And yeah, they've had to pivot big time. And Poilievre, full marks to him on Saturday. He did the full pivot and came out and as we've been talking about, with a more statesman-like approach and looking a little more like the prime minister in waiting to form a government. And if he does, hopefully it's a majority government.
Yeah.
So we have some downtime from the question marks hanging over a minority government. Minority governments are great, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But after a while, especially in the times we're in right now, we need some solid government leadership without having to worry about all of a sudden falling into a snap election. It's bad enough that Trudeau left us hanging up until after Trump was sworn in.
Yeah.
And Trump's like a shark with blood in the water, and that's what he sees here in Canada right now, blood in the water. Mm-hmm. We're at a weak point. And he's going to bat us around. It's like a cat with a mouse, bat it around and play with it. And that's what he's doing. Yeah. Unfortunately, on the other side of it, he's also now playing games with Ukraine. That's kind of scary.
Yes,
really
exactly.
Kind of scary.
Yeah, and we have an enormous Ukraine population here in Canada. So you know what? You never know. That might become a discussion point or a topic point amongst all our candidates in terms of our position with some of the wars and conflicts that are going around the world. And we have a monstrous Ukrainian population in mid-Canada. So you know what? I think that's going to become a very serious discussion point to woo those votes, especially in central Canada.
Yep, we have a couple of comments coming in, Eddie, so let's bring a few of them up. From Greg Z, gentlemen, remember, common sense is uncommon.
I like that one. That is good.
There's a lot of truth in that, Greg.
Yeah.
He's the master.
Yeah, write that down somewhere, Gary. We have to use it in our next show.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and Mike Hill project. 1 point, if the Liberals were really gaining that quickly, why would all these Liberal MPs be jumping ship? I think these polls have skewed the data. Mike brings up a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they jumping ship? Well, obviously, most of them have qualified for their pensions now. And maybe they think that the person who is the front runner is not going to be the guy to beat Poilievre. But that's a really good point. I haven't quite given that some thought before, but now I am.
No, I mean Mike's question is pretty valid, and I think we can break it down in two. I mean, there were a lot of rats that jumped the Liberal ship before Justin resigned, right? Now, have any other rats jumped the Liberal ship in the last couple of weeks, Gary, that I'm not aware of?
The cultural minister. Yeah, I can't remember her name right now, but she.
So Mike's got a point then.
Yeah, she announced this week she would not be reoffering. Okay. And maybe some of them were so tied to Justin Trudeau in the way that he handles things that they just feel that they wouldn't be able to operate under somebody new and probably coming in with whoever goes in has to do a clean house cleaning for sure. The broom has to be out, and maybe they just feel that they'll go on their terms instead of someone else's terms. It could be that the new Liberal leader would reject some of them if they said they were going to reoffer, or they want to reoffer, and maybe I don't know.
There's also the possibility of fresh, talented blood nipping on everybody's heels as well. Some of that change is going to be required, right?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So, good point, Mike. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now you've got me thinking, for sure.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah, scary thought, isn't it? Okay, so let's just move along here. And just before I do that, let's do this. Okay. So, coming up, the other side of the showdown for Prime Minister, the Liberal Leadership 5. Now, if you are enjoying our live streams each week and want to show your support in a different way, you can buy us a coffee. Simply scan the QR code on the screen, and there's a link below in the description. And of course, please like, share, and subscribe. Eddie and I thank you for your support. Coming up now, the Liberal leadership hopefuls are set. This past Monday was the last day for candidates for the Liberal leadership to make their final entry payments to the party, with the French debate set for Monday, that's the 24th, and the English debate on Tuesday night, the 25th. The winner will be announced March 9th after voting is concluded. Former Bank of Canada and Bank of England Governor Mark Carney is considered the front runner, and during a recent campaign stop in British Columbia, had this to say about U.S. President Trump's tariffs talk and annexation threat.
You know, you never take a decision before you need to take a decision. And so nothing is pre-wired. Let's see what the situation is in the middle of March and do what is best for Canadians. And the government will do what's best for Canadians. If Parliament needs to be recalled for certain reasons, it will be. If it makes sense to get a strong mandate at that point, that is what will follow. But make no mistake, and I think this is a message for the United States, is that Canadians, and I'm not speaking about leadership contenders, I'm not speaking about current governments, federal or provincial. Canadians are united on this issue. Canadians have a strong sense of resolve. We're going to stand up collectively for Canada, and we're going to build our economy here in Canada first and foremost. And we'll see what arrangements we come with the Americans when we get to the table.
In that comment that he made, I don't know if you caught it, but he was talking about, it almost sounds like after he's elected leader, he's not necessarily going to call Parliament back into session right away. He talked about if we needed to bring Parliament back, we would bring Parliament back. So I didn't really catch it the first time I was watching the video, and then as I was doing the final editing to get that clip, I said, wait a minute, what did he just say? And so it almost sounds like if he becomes the leader of the party and our first unelected prime minister, that he will in fact just coast for a few weeks. Well, he has to bring it back before the end of March.
Right.
Because they have to pass the bill to keep the government going beyond the end of March, because March 31st is the end of the fiscal year. So I think they were talking March 24th was the date that Trudeau had mentioned about coming back. Now, I don't know if Carney is thinking I can push that back another few days or what the story is, but it's just the way he phrased that, I found it kind of interesting. And what I finished watching of that Q&A with the media, I don't remember anyone kind of picking up on that and asking him to clarify what he said. So, but I did find that interesting. He's very low key in a lot of ways, and just kind of straightforward. But I've talked to a few Liberals who have met him in person, and they find him quite personable.
Okay.
But he
strikes me as Stephen Harper. Very dry, straightforward, very little joking with him, smiling was a rarity from him. My son took a picture with him. My oldest son, Eric, took a picture with him at Molson Stadium during an Alouettes game where one of his big gorillas came by and said, the Prime Minister would like to take a picture with you. That's like he had a choice, right? and we have this beautiful 8x10 with my son, with his arm around the Prime Minister of Canada with a big smile, and then there you see Mr. Harper.
Wow.
It was like, wow. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
photo op with a citizen, and you can't even break a smile. So this is where I'm seeing the similarities in terms of posturing between Mr. Carney and former Prime Minister Harper. It's just that low key, stoic. Nothing can make you smile or cry. Light a fire under your pants, and you won't even react differently. Type of guy. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but that's how he strikes me.
Well, don't get me wrong. Certainly, you're not the governor of the Bank of Canada and then the governor of the Bank of England and not have some smarts about you and not being able to manage money and manage, a large organization. But
it's about reaching Canadians, no?
Yeah, and I think he might be getting a little bit better. I think he needs to loosen up a little more and really work on talking to me instead of just slightly above me. There's statesmanship there. You can't take that away from him.
For sure.
Yeah, there is statesmanship there, but I can't put my finger on it, but I it's like you said, I'm still looking for the real Mark Carney, as I am looking for the real Pierre Poilievre. I guess that's going to be my slogan going forward.
Yeah, who are you?
Yeah, exactly. So, but he's the perceived front runner, and certainly he has raised the most money. It's over $1 million. Well over $1 million. He's way out in front, and so the smart money follows the winner, right?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. So,
and I think Mr. Carney's got support from 80 members, senior members in the Liberal Party, and Freeland, the last numbers I seen was 26. So he's got a significant lead within the Liberal Party itself. And interestingly enough, I just pulled out some polls yesterday where with and it's something you mentioned last week, I think, with Carney as the leader of the Liberal Party. When they were looking at potential voters and where they would vote if he was the leader of the Liberal Party, all of a sudden those numbers jumped tremendously, stealing a few points from the Conservatives and stealing the rest from the NDP and Bloc Québécois. We're talking about Conservatives at 40 and the Liberals at 37, 38. Boy, that's neck and neck, and that's if Carney becomes the leader of the Liberal Party. So. I clearly understand the Poilievre pivot with these particular numbers available to him. He has to pivot. He just can't stay the course, and he has to change something. So that was a very interesting number I managed to see yesterday in the latest polls, and it just goes to show how disappointed and how disenchanted the country has become with Prime Minister Trudeau, and they're looking for fresh solutions, fresh blood. They're looking for leadership on all levels, not just when there's an emergency. Mr. Trudeau is acting quite well, extreme gallantry in protecting our country in terms of what he's trying to manage as a lame duck prime minister in managing the United States. He's done a very, very nice job. But you know what? I guess too little, too late. And the Canadians are looking for something more substantial across a wide range of issues and concerns that most Canadians have,
So Mike just popped in with another comment here, and
nice.
He says it would be to Carney's benefit to call an election the day after he wins the leadership while he has momentum. If he waits, he will be a stranger of the House. He hasn't won an electoral district. Good point. He is. He's on the outside looking in, really, as far as the House of Commons. So, yeah. And he would have momentum from that win. Yeah, the sooner he gets a seat, Now here comes the question: where will he run?
Oh, good point. And you know, I was wondering about that very question. Is Trudeau going to be stepping down away from his Papineau riding? I don't think he's ever made any mention of that, has he?
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, he's
He'll be
gone
done.
here. I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is that a riding he would be interested in? I don't know.
I think he would probably be looking for a riding in the Edmonton area. That's his home base originally.
Right.
So, is there a Liberal? I think there are only a couple of Liberals in Alberta. Maybe two. So I don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting. But certainly, if he runs in a seat in the Edmonton area, I mean, he's the hometown boy. He's the prime minister without a seat, and he could very well be the prime minister for the next 4 years. So would Edmontonians support him?
Good question. Yeah.
Because well, Edmonton is, Alberta in general is pretty conservative. So. Would you, if you have a chance to elect a prime minister, would you support it? So, yeah, Mike was just saying, I'll just bring it up. He was thinking of running in Edmonton in Randy Boissonneau's riding. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. For sure, where he's going to offer. So that's Carney. Let's move along to former finance minister and deputy prime minister Chrystia Freeland, who has been talking tough when discussing a response to Trump's trade and sovereignty threats, as she makes the rounds on various media shows, including MSNBC's Velchi.
Well, we are your biggest customer, so watch out. If you hit us, we will hit back. And our retaliation, unlike these across-the-board tariffs, is going to be surgically targeted. We're going to design it so we do the minimum harm to ourselves and have the maximum impact in the United States. And we are going to target constituencies that have particular influence in the White House. So one of the things I am proposing is a 100% tariff on Teslas. And I am inviting all the countries in the world that would be affected by these tariffs to join us. I think that would get us some attention in the Oval Office.
Wow. She's going right after.
I'd be afraid of her the way she was staring me down there. Wow.
She's going after the unelected president.
Uh-huh. Oh boy, oh boy.
That woman is, both guns blazing. She has been talking pretty tough, and today she had a media availability at a farm. I think it was somewhere, I can't remember where it was now, but she did a media availability in a farm, in a dairy farm, and where she said she will do what she can to maintain the strict marketplace that we have for dairy products and such, because that's been a thorn in the side of Trump and company forever as far as our closed market is concerned. So the supply management, she would maintain the supply management as it sits now for the protection of our dairy farmers and such. She also seemed to suggest that she actually, I think she said her first job was on a dairy farm. And
I believe so.
She met her husband in Britain, and he was either working on a dairy farm or his family. I think his family owned a dairy farm of some sort. And he actually, I think she said, if I was not like I was doing other things, but trying to listen to this at the same time. I think she said he actually proposed to her in the barn, which is kind of a neat story. And if you're going to propose, you gotta do it and do it in a big way. Something really different. So anyway, she's perceived as the second place. Her fundraising is a little bit more than the others, but she's trailing Carney big time. Now, there's no question Carney is the favorite of the backroom Liberals, and Christia has fallen out of favor, probably because they're still smarting with the way she took Trudeau's kneecaps from under him. But you know what? Thank God she stood up. Yeah. Because we still would have been languishing with Trudeau trying to figure out, will I stay or will I go?
True. Absolutely. No doubt in my mind.
And the farther we get into Trump's reign with a weak government, the worse it's going to be for us. If we need a majority government, and we need a solid leader to stand up to Trump. And there's a clip that's coming up in a minute, and I really like what I heard. And it's not the first time that this individual has said a few things that I really like. However, where they stand in the running, I don't know. It could be a leader that a good leader that the Liberals never had, sort of scenario overall. So, any other thoughts on Freeland? I mean, she's feisty. She doesn't. Yeah. She's not pulling any punches out on the campaign trail, and a lot of the interviews she's been doing, and she's been doing U.S. like MSNBC, and other. She's been doing podcasts and such, and she's not taking. She's not afraid to put it out there as far as what she's saying and what she's standing for and what she's proposing.
Well, Gary, here is a candidate different from. For leader of Canada, you're looking at Poilievre. Which Poilievre am I looking at, right? Carney. Yeah. Who are you? What am I looking at? Right now, you have zero question in terms of who Chrystia Freeland is. I don't have any question in my mind what kind of a prime minister she would make. Very clear. She's very passionate. She has compassion for fellow Canadians who are struggling. She understands what the critical issues are for Canadians today with the Trump administration running roughshod over us as best they can. And Donald Trump, I think, is afraid of her. He's never said anything creative, constructive, or positive about her.
He doesn't like her a little bit.
Doesn't like her at all.
Yeah.
That's because she's a strong, opinionated, firm-minded individual. I'm not going to say because she's a woman. This is just an individual that's strong, and Donald doesn't do very well with strong people.
Yeah, she really stood up to him during the renegotiation of the free trade agreement, and he did not like her at all. And he stated it point blank, I don't like her.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? Good for her. Good for her.
Yeah,
but to me,
absolutely.
There's zero question in terms of who she is to me.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. And we have another comment to bring up. From Monel, she had experience dealing with Trump. She would know how to handle him. And that, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Nancy says, I am not committed yet, but she impresses me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move along to number 3 on the list here, and that is Former government House Leader Karina Gould is running what she calls a grassroots campaign and has committed to an overhaul of our social programs that could eventually include a much talked about basic income. Okay, just stand by one. We seem to have an issue with Karina. Where'd she go? See if I can jump start it down here. Okay. Well, that's strange.
Well,
I just lost. Let's try the next one, and I'll see if I can fix it while the clip's playing, if the clip plays. Okay, Montreal businessman and former MP Frank Baylis was among the first to declare his intentions to run. And during a recent appearance on CPAC's Primetime Politics, he pulled no punches in how he would deal with President Trump.
We have to say to ourselves, we cannot live under this threat constantly. So I would have called his bluff, quite frankly. I would have said, if the Mexicans were with us, I would have said, look, let's do it. Let's feel this pain. You're going to feel as much pain as we are. And you've got yourself elected promising Americans to make your economy better. I don't think they're going to like to see their stock market collapse. I don't think they're going to like to see the massive inflation that's going to hit. I don't think they're going to like losing all the jobs that's going to happen to them. So I think we have to put our, how do I say, draw a line in the sand and stop letting Donald Trump push us around.
That I like. That I like. No nonsense approach. Draw the line in the sand, call his bluff, and stop having him push us around. I watched him in another interview shortly after he declared his intentions, but before everybody was jumping in to the race. And I have to say, I've actually watched 3 now interviews of his, and I've been really impressed with his approach. It's very businesslike, but it's a really no-nonsense approach. He does have some experience because he sat as an MP here between 2015 and 2019, so he's not going in green. Unfortunately, I don't think he's really well known outside of Quebec.
Quebec circles, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know how much of a chance he has, but it's too bad. I really would like to see him to be on the bench, to have bench strength. If I'm a Liberal, I'd want bench strength, and then there's our guy in waiting.
Absolutely,
yeah, absolutely. Hopefully he does decide, if he's not successful here, that he does decide to offer in a seat, and as you say, get a portfolio and get in there, get a little a little more fame across the country, well known, and we'll go from there. Now I'd like to go back to Karina Gould, and I'll just as I said, she's pledging to do an overhaul of our social programs, and she's leaving the door open to perhaps a basic income down the road.
Within 1 year of becoming Prime Minister, I would bring forward a plan to update our social safety net to really help Canadians, and not just catch them when they fall, but also to enable them to bounce back even stronger than before. And so what does that look like? It means a modernized EI system that actually helps Canadians when in their time of need. It means providing more supports to vulnerable seniors, and it means providing a dignified dignified existence to people with disabilities. And it means setting us on a path towards a basic income in this country.
A basic income within this country. Much discussed over the years, but never really getting any kind of traction. And I don't know how I feel about that. I really don't know how I feel about a basic income. If there's no question, she made a good point about, the social programs that are in place. Were in place, for the 20th century. Now times are changing, things have changed. We're in the 21st century. I don't disagree that, having a look and overhauling a number of the safety nets is warranted. Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the basic income though,
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. I see where I think we're both struggling with that a little bit for our own reasons, which we won't go into here. But you know what, I feel that a lot of people would just take advantage of such a wonderful program without actually contributing to anything in this country. I mean, that's what I'm thinking, right? And universal basic income is something that I think is taken out of the playbook out of a couple of our Scandinavian countries, our Scandinavian friends. I'm not sure what the opinions are about its worth out there, the cost to it, because somebody's going to have to pay for that, and how successful it is. But I think it's something that's being taken out of the playbook of our Scandinavian countries, which typically rank in the top 5 right across the board in terms of quality of life. So I don't know. Is that something that would work here, and is that something that Canadians would appreciate here? Especially, myself, I've been working for 40 years. How comfortable would I be with a universal basic income plan? I really don't know. I think a lot more explanation is going to have to go into it in terms of what does it exactly entail? What is it going to cost to Canadians? Where are we going to get money for this? Who's going to be eligible for it? A lot of questions. You know what? So I think there's room for discussion and room for promotion of these things if she's really that serious about it. And I think she's the only candidate who brought it up, if I'm not mistaken.
So far. Now, another former MP, Ruby Dalla, is also seeking the leadership, and in a recent interview with India Today, she outlined her policy for dealing with illegal migrants.
We have many opportunities and avenues for people to come and to immigrate in Canada, whether it's through family reunification, whether it's through economic investment, whether it is in regards to a studying process or a work permit. There are many legal means by which people can enter Canada. If anyone has come to Canada illegally or is in Canada illegally, or if anyone has come through, or via human traffickers, I intend to clamp down on human traffickers. And if they are here illegally or have come here illegally, I, as Prime Minister, will deport them.
Well, she's not pulling any punches.
No. And you know what? That's important to, what she just brought up is equally important to a lot of Canadians here on social media. Just looking at some of the social media tracks and groups, a lot of individuals and a lot of citizens are really concerned about, illegals coming into this country. And interestingly enough, coming across from various parts of the world into Canada, but very heavily in terms of the illegals that are pouring in across, of all places, the American border. So a lot of concern about that, and nothing wrong with her that being part of her platform and being very serious about that particular component of her platform. And a lot of Canadians, I think, would be interested to hear what she says, number one, and number two, what the other candidates have to say about it as well. I haven't heard very much from the other 4 about this particular topic, but it has to be discussed. It just has to be discussed.
Now, I believe she served 3 terms as an MP and then left and now, and she was one of the last in as far as the leadership race is concerned. So I don't know what level of support she has. I think she's behind Bayliss as far as fundraising is concerned. Bayliss was behind Gould by a bit, and Gould's behind Freeland, and Freeland is trailing Carney. Carney again is the front runner with over $1 million raised so far. So we have a couple of more comments coming in here too. So let's get caught up there. Oh, by the way, we have 4 likes and 1 thumbs down. So we must be doing something. Yeah, must be doing something right. Yeah. Deborah says, can we believe them though? Trudeau promised reforms to our voting process. Where did that go? That went right out the window shortly after he was elected. When all of a sudden he realized what he was doing, I think more than anything, there was a report that came back, and then all of a sudden he realizes, oh, what we were proposing or thinking about might be disadvantageous to us. Oops. Yeah, oopsie. Let's get rid of that in a hurry. And let's see, what have we got here? From GC, Toronto rules Canada. Sad but true. Toronto is the center of the universe, so they say.
However, it's the center of the NHL and hockey. That's for sure.
This is the same city that it's going to take 3 weeks to clean up the mess from the last 2 storms. What are we doing in Montreal? 8 days. So let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. We'll just let that one go. Let's just keep things civil overall. Let's not get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, who cares about the Liberals? Should they rule Canada? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm not sure where you're going with that one, GC, but each to their own for sure. All right, let's see. Now, where am I going now? Push a button and see what comes up. Oh, look at this.
Ow.
Okay, so anyway, up next, Canadian patriotism reaching new heights. First, a little reminder for you to give us a like, subscribe, share, to help us grow our channel. We really appreciate you with your comments and reaching out with your comments. And, a lot of you, tonight now we have 5 thumbs up with the thumbs up. So you're helping us grow our channel. We're having a lot of fun while doing it. And so thank you so much for that. But, just remember, just keep those likes and subscribes coming, and also feel free to share any episode of Night Talk and spread the word. So patriotism is mounting. The level is in this country is hitting new heights thanks to Donald Trump's tariff threats, saying Canada isn't viable as a country. Talk of taking us as the 51st state. Well, people continue to cancel trips to the U.S. Air Canada, reassigning capacity from U.S. routes as ticket demand for American destinations dropped. Meanwhile, WestJet has reported a 25% drop in demand for U.S. flights and has been reassessing that whole situation. Small retailers across the country are reporting an increase in interest and sales of Canadian-made products. And also, Eddie, where is it here? There's on social media, there is talk of a national boycott coming up. Bring that up.
Correct.
Yeah, on the 28th. A boycott of all U.S. retailers doing business here for one day. Show them we have power when provoked. Absolutely no purchases from Walmart, Home Depot, Best Buy, Amazon, McDonald's, Staples, Gap, Toys R Us, Costco, or any other U.S. retailers for one day. Support only small or large Canadian or Mexican producers and companies. It's time to stand up for ourselves. Be strong and be proud. Spread the word. I totally get where they're coming from on this, and probably I'm going to upset a few people. A couple of weeks ago, I would be, yeah, rah, 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 let's dive in right away. Then I was watching somebody making a comment one night who brought up a really good point, and I said, you know what, wow, yeah, I've been struggling with how intertwined we are with some aspects of my life, from a technological standpoint and everything. Yeah. But this person brought up a really good point, and that is, yes, we have American companies operating here in Canada, but they're all employing Canadians. A lot of them are also buying and featuring and selling Canadian-made products. You have companies like Costco where their employees are quite happy with their working conditions and their wages that they're paid. And again, Costco is buying Canadian products and produce and other goods. Yes, there are U.S. items in there, but we can just ignore the U.S. items. So, and then you get into like McDonald's, for example, which is franchises. A lot of Canadians have invested their savings and bought McDonald's franchises, Starbucks franchises, and they're employing Canadians, and they're buying Canadian goods, and services, in addition to what they're buying as a franchisee from the parent company. But this is where, because we've become so intertwined and so dependent on American trade, that we better be careful with some of this and not shoot ourselves in the foot. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I kind of thought of that too, but I think with all the emotion that's involved with Facebook groups and the conversations on social media about buying Canadian, buying Mexican, if it happens to be an American company that employs and purchases its products in Canada, that should be okay. And there's a lot of confusion in terms of what's wrong and what's right here. And I think it comes down to an individual thing, but a complete outright boycott for more than 24 hours. I mean, I think 24 hours is going to have a tremendous impact. You're absolutely right, Gary. A lot of these American companies hire thousands upon thousands and keep them employed Canadians. Anything beyond a protest exercise, I think will have dramatic effects on our economy in a negative way as well. So I think there's got to be a lot of care taken in this. I think we have to be smart about how we protest in our own personal way. But en masse protests like the one you just displayed up on the screen, Gary, I would tend to agree with you. There are some inherent dangers to something like that, especially if a widespread movement takes hold and it goes beyond 24 hours. That in itself would be extremely, extremely dangerous. And yeah, a lot of Canadians might end up being out of work. So yeah, it's hard to say where to draw the line on something like this, right? But your point is absolutely valid.
The good news is that we are all much more aware of Canadian products and looking Correct. For Canadian substitutes for American products. And right. I think, between that and people canceling trips to the U.S., I think we are starting to build momentum and sending the message.
Yeah.
But after I gave this some thought when it was raised a couple of nights ago, and I stopped and I thought about it, and I said, wow, they really do have a point. you're kind of like curled up next to and sleeping with the enemy in some respects.
Right.
But you can still support the Canadians who are working there and Canadian products by buying just Canadian products in those stores.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, and again, it's just we have put our eggs in one basket, big time,
For
big
far
time.
too long. For far too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, I mean, we're all trying to. I mean, I personally, we went grocery shopping. I'm in Mexico. We went grocery shopping last time, and we've met a lot of Canadians here at the facility we're at. And just like us, they are also shopping wisely and smartly, making sure they're buying non-American product. And my wife and I actually put back a few American-made products while we were grocery shopping in Mexico, and except for one item that was an American product but made in Mexico, everything else was either Mexican complete or some Canadian product as well down here. So it's not just Canadians in Canada; it's Canadians in Mexico internationally that are also trying to support Canada and in our own way protest against what Donald Trump is trying to do to us in Canada. And also, just as a follow-up to last week's discussion, that Facebook group I was telling you about, by Canadian, they just surpassed 1 million members.
wow.
That is a lot of adults in this country of 40 million people. You know, we're getting like 3.5% of the adult population is actually subscribed to this, and it continues to climb. And generally speaking, the comments on there have been encouraging. People expressing their experiences, meeting other Canadians in grocery aisles, and exchanging information about what to buy, what not to buy. It's really amazing seeing Canadians get together on social media like this for a common cause. That's for the good of Canadians at the end of the day. Canadian merchants, Canadian farmers, Canadian producers. You know, it's not a bad thing. So. They good for you guys, 1 million plus and counting, and let's keep building that.
It kind of puts the real definition of social back into social media. We do have some more comments to catch up on.
Nice. What do we got?
Okay, so Monel says it's just one day just to show what we are worth. Okay. I know, I get where you're coming from. But we still have to be careful, I think. Okay, Mike says at Deborah, we can't trust the Liberals no matter who is the leader. I'm voting for the Conservatives. And then he follows that up with the Canadian nurses across the border every day will be a huge hit to the hospitals in the U.S. where they work. Mm-hmm. That's right, there are a lot of... a lot.
Especially the Detroit-Windsor corridor. It's amazing how many medical professionals cross that bridge every day.
Nancy says, Gary, I agree. Let's not get hateful. Canadians working in these companies need our support. We need to be careful how we react. Buy Canadian products. Steve says, Canadianism all the way. And he follows that up with, let's support Chinesism too, and EU. Let's sell our energy overseas in the near future. Bang on there, Steve, as far as our energy sales overseas. There are markets both in Europe and, of course, over in Southeast Asia as well. We do have pipelines and energy that we can get to, as they call it, tidewater or the coast out west. We don't have it yet on the east, and the Trudeau government blew the opportunity many years ago to have a pipeline flowing east. How quickly we can get it flowing east if everybody's on board this time to get it. You know what? It could be done fairly quickly.
Correct.
You can always move a construction project up. It's going to cost a little bit more, but you know what? The return on investment in the long run, I think, would be worth it. And we have 8 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down now.
Smart man, that Steve. I know him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's see now. I want to play one more clip because
Okay.
I want to play it as a reminder as to what and who we are dealing with here. And this is the one clip in particular that's going to stick with me forever.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens.
You heard
That
that,
one
right?
is sticking in your craw. Did last week and it
Oh,
still does today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I may play that every week going forward until somebody takes a baseball bat somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
Honest to
Oh,
God, that was just...
That chuckle behind just next video.
Okay, so Eddie, aside from annexation, threats, and insults, is there any better way to get Canadian patriotism to a fever pitch than a great international hockey game? Our usual foe is the Russians. This time, however, it is a showdown with the Americans. Eddie?
Absolutely. Well, you know what, Gary? When Canada played the United States in their game last week, I went to a local bar here in Playa del Carmen. I went to see a couple of fights, and a hockey game broke out after that. I mean, it was that crazy. And the reason why I went, as opposed to watching it on our television screen at our apartment, is I wanted to see if there was any sort of ambiance that you typically see in Montreal for a hockey game like this. And quite surprisingly, it was rather quiet. There wasn't a lot of boisterous Americanism or boisterous Canadianism here. There were quite a few people in the bar itself, but everyone was pretty much reserved. I was at least expecting, some of the patrons of the bar restaurant to get up and sing "O Canada," and there were a lot of Canadians in there. I had a couple of American fellows from Boston sitting beside me. I was interested to see what the reactions were going to be in terms of the singing of the national anthems while they were played, and it was relatively quiet. And I did get the opportunity to listen closely as I could, because they turned up the speakers on the televisions, and as expected, Montrealers and Quebecers and Canadians just absolutely booed the hell out of the American national anthem. In one way, I felt horrible for the players and the American citizens in general, the well-meaning American citizens. I did feel bad. But by the same token, I knew as a Canadian it wasn't a protest of the or disrespect of the American flag or the national anthem of the United States. This was an absolute outright booing of Trump completely. And when speaking to other individuals here, it's always about Trump. We're disagreeing with Trump. It's not really a disagreement with American citizens in general. And at the end of the day, the United States won the game 3-1. It was an excellent display of hockey. Hard, tough, in-your-face hockey. It was a great hockey game. And then following up on social media, on the Sportsnet and ESPN and so on and so forth, it was incredible to see the different comments that were coming out. Some hateful, some supportive, some anti-Canadian, some anti-Trump. But at the end, the question becomes: was the booing justified? Well, it all depends on who you're speaking to. And it also happened in the USA versus Finland game earlier on in the tournament that in Montreal they were booing them vehemently. And also the Professional Women's Hockey League, when the Montreal Victoire played against an American team, there was some slight booing while the national anthem played. So it wasn't just for this particular men's tournament. And I can very happily say, following up, that the booing did not happen at a sold-out international PB tournament in Quebec City. So you know what? People are targeting their displeasure to a certain individual and not the flag because it's not widespread. And in social media, there were many Americans that voiced displeasure with their flag being disrespected, so on and so forth. And just as many Americans commented on there that we didn't appreciate the disrespect, but we understand why, which is really nice to see. I was surprised to see that many comments like that. Many Canadians commented on to the Americans and said they thought it had no place in sport. And by the same token, now get this, many Canadians actually apologized in their comments to their American neighbors while trying to explain that they were not booing the anthem or the United States of America, that they were booing Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump was a polite term. Most of the time, there was a name associated with that. So you had widespread feeling about this, and a lot of individuals were saying, you know what, this is great for the sport of hockey. The viewership on ESPN went through the roof in the United States, so that's generating some interest down in the U.S. and they're being exposed to one of the greatest sports in the world, side by side with soccer. That American neighbors are being exposed to great skill and talented hockey. So you know what? All walks of life, different opinions, and should there be a place for that kind of a protest? I don't like it when national anthems are booed, but on the other side, I clearly understand why they booed. And quite frankly, if I was in the stands, I'd be hard pressed not to boo either. So I have to admit I probably would have booed the anthem as well, but with some reservation. So now we have the final game. Both Canada and the United States advanced. They'll be playing tomorrow night at 8 p.m. They aren't playing in Montreal. They're actually playing in Boston.
This is going to be interesting to watch.
Yes, it is. So Canada already played, I forget who they played, Sweden, I think, and they beat them. Sweden or Finland, I can't remember, to advance.
Finland.
Yeah, and there was some minor booing from the fans in Boston of the Canadian anthem, which I expected a hell of a lot more booing, and it wasn't all that prevalent. So what does that say for the next game? Time will only tell. I mean, is it going to be an act of retaliation? Is it going to be, well, you booed our anthem, we're going to boo your anthem? I really don't know, But at the end of the day, I hope as good Americans and good Canadians and, the well-meaning citizens across the border, I really hope this is going to be a great hockey game. People take it for what it is, as a tournament of the best players in the world. Right now, Canada, United States representing NHL in the NHL, and take it all in stride. You know what? If booing does occur, you know what? It's going to become. It's very sad when sporting events are politicized and the public reacts to the politicization of something that should never have been brought into the picture. So I hope it's going to be a great game tomorrow.
What's your prediction?
My prediction, I think it's going to be a 4-3 win by Canada in overtime. I really believe it's going to go down to the wire. And even if the United States wins, I'm happy for them as well, because they've got some excellent hockey players. And you know what? I hope that the NHL has learned from this exercise. I hope NBA, National Basketball Association, has learned from this. Major League Baseball, even NFL football. If you really want to have an exposition to demonstrate your sport at the highest level, you don't have skills competitions and friendly hockey games, because nobody cares. Nobody's going to risk his career to stop a slap shot or whatever the case is. Put a national jersey on your back, everything changes. As you saw, all four countries competed like it was the last thing since sliced cheese that they were fighting for. So you know what? Game on. If a couple of fights happen, let's have a great tournament. Let's have a great game. Let's enjoy this great game of hockey, and let's hope that the political rhetoric is kept for a minimum. And if Americans do boo Canadians, well, que sera, drop the puck and let's get on with it.
All right. We do have a couple of more comments to catch up on here. Let's see. Come on. There we go. Steve says LNG will be big for overseas sales. And you know what? We have the terminal in New Brunswick to pump the LNG out. I believe they can, I know they can receive. I think they can do it, pump it out as well. So Mike says he's calling it Canadians will win 3-2.
Okay.
Steve comes back with Trudeau announced a high-speed train between Quebec City and Toronto. Steve, you had to poke the bear, didn't you? You just had to poke the bear on that one.
Yeah.
I will refrain. Needless to say that I am not a happy camper, and anyway, we'll let that one go.
Why now?
For now.
Why mention it now? Where were you 6 months ago, a year ago? The last time I took
You're
a
a
plane to
lame
Toronto?
duck. You're a lame duck prime minister with 2 weeks left.
Why take the thunder away from your successor?
And
seriously.
Anyway, there are a couple of things that I could go off on a tangent, and I won't unless I need to catch up on the comments. Mike says game time is 7 Eastern tomorrow.
Well,
You're
you're
Atlantic, aren't you?
I just checked. I just checked the Four Nations website. It says here Thursday, February 20, 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Okay.
So folks, just double check. I'm showing 8 p.m. here. So
yeah. Okay. And Steve, Mark Carney will create and push independence from the influence of the United States and Trump. Okay. And then he follows that up with, don't forget, 49% of Americans voted for Trump. Booing is for all of them. And you know what? Yeah. 49% voted for Trump.
yes, they did.
Yeah. And booing is for all Americans who have been apologizing because of what had happened. Right. Okay, that train project will never get off the ground. Oh yeah, and Mike says I am wrong about the game time. Okay, so it's corrected. It is 8 Eastern.
8. Okay.
Yeah. No, what you said, right? 7.
Yeah.
Which is it? 8. Okay. Now I'm totally confused.
Thanks, Mike.
I am totally confused. Oh, we have 2 thumbs down now and 8 thumbs up. So,
all right.
Yeah. Anyhow, I guess it's about time to wrap it up for tonight. It's been another busy night for sure. And a version of the show will be posted on our YouTube channel later this evening. If you are viewing this at a later date, by all means, please leave us a comment below. And we are interested in what you have to say, and I'll try and respond. And please give us a like, share, and or subscribe. Night Talk returns in 7 days. From Montreal, I'm Gary MacDonald. Good night, Eddie.
And from Mexico, Eddie Tecalic. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.